I would like to introduce Margaret Wrinkle, who will be introducing Min Jin Lee in her novel, Pachinko. Runner-up for the 2018 Fiction Award, Margaret is the 2014 Dayton Literary Peace Prize Fiction runner-up for WASH. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, Margaret is a writer, filmmaker, education, and visual artist. Her award-winning documentary, Broken Ground, about the racial divide in her historically conflicted hometown, was featured on NPR's Morning Edition, and it won the Council on Foundations Film Festival. She lives in New Mexico. Please welcome Margaret Wrinkle.
Thank you, Will. Good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be back in Dayton to present this unique prize to such a deserving novel. Thank you, Sharon, for this idea you had about how literature can spread peace throughout the world. I came to Min Jin Lee's novel Pachinko through my book club. Our fearless leader, Will, is Korean American, and his grandparents also fled Korea at the turn of the century. Late this past summer, he emailed us to suggest we squeeze in an extra meeting. He told us his daughter, Melina, had come into his bedroom talking about Pachinko, calling it the best book she had ever read. We took her recommendation seriously because Melina is remarkable. She's one of the oldest of her generation of children born to two fathers. She's just graduated from Yale, where she was a Truman Scholar and the co-president of the North Korean Human Rights Group. She's at Cambridge now as a Gates Scholar. She's passionate about criminal justice reform, working within the worldwide Korean community, and she hopes to work for another Dayton Literary Peace Prize winner, Brian Stevenson, who would be lucky to have her. So when she told us to read this book, we did what she said. Her father, Will, made a big Korean meal of galbi, japchae, and kimchi, and we could not stop talking about this novel. The great sweep of it recalls both Dickens and Tolstoy, while the specificity of Lee's indelible characters grounds this saga into a story we can feel happening to us. We sat and ate and talked for hours. We agreed and disagreed about so many incidents, characters, motivations. We ran late. It was the most satisfying book club meeting we've ever had, so they were thrilled when I told them Pachinko had been selected as the fiction runner-up for the Dayton Literary Peace Prize. Lee's indomitable heroine Sunja starts life in a small Korean fishing village until Japan's annexation sends her family into exile in Japan, where they must live as second-class citizens. Lee traces 4 generations of this one family with enormous care, determined to honor the lives of ordinary people who are so often left out of written history. Pachinko is a game of chance hugely popular in Japan, yet it's looked down upon by most Japanese, as are the Koreans who run the Pachinko parlors after being shut out of most other employment. By using the name of the game as her title, Lee continually reminds us that life itself is a game of chance and fate, and that we are all subject to larger forces. By detailing so carefully what happens to this one family when they are forced into exile, Lee gently but relentlessly reminds us that this twist of fate, which has already happened to so many of us, could happen to any of us. It had been months since I read the novel when I sat down to write this, and yet without even looking back at the pages, so many moments of the novel came flooding back. Hooni's humble kindness, Sunja first meeting Hunsu on that small rocky beach, and yes, him pressing her gently against those rocks. Her initial longing for him matched by her principled refusal, then her ongoing struggle to navigate the long shadow he casts across her life. her meeting the young pastor Isaac, first caring for him with her mother and then agreeing to marry him to give the child she is carrying a name. I'll stop there because I don't want to ruin the journey of the book for those of you who have not yet taken it. But trust me when I say that this book is one of the rare books that will change you by changing the way you see the world. As Min has said, I find that most racism, xenophobia, and irrational hatred disappear with greater intimacy. By working so hard for so many years to create the whole huge, believable world of this novel, Min gives us the chance to gain this greater intimacy, which then changes the way we move through our own worlds. As Melina said, Min makes the stakes of warfare so individual as she pays homage to the resilience of quiet and epic lives swept up in the undertow of violence. I'm hearkening back to Faulkner's Nobel speech when I say that Pachinko inspires us by reminding us how to not only endure, but to also prevail.
Oh my, it's different from here. First, I want to thank Margaret. She made me cry. It's not that difficult to make me cry, though. Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, everyone. I just want to take a little bit of Ta-Nehisi Coates' time. I want to thank Sharon. Where are you? Thank you, Sharon. And I want to thank Mark. And I want to thank the Dayton Literary Peace Prize Foundation, which is, as you know, comprised of so many individuals. And I want to thank the first readers and the judges for all of your hard work. I serve as a judge for many awards now, and goodness, it is difficult. I also want to thank the volunteers and the staff of the Schuster Center for all of their visible and invisible work, which makes this evening seamless. Thank you. I am so deeply honored to join the Dayton Literary Peace Prize family. I am in the company of such extraordinary writers that I admire so much, and I want to congratulate all of you for your beautiful books. A little bit about me. In the March of 1976, my parents, two sisters, and I immigrated to the United States, and I was 7 years old. We flew from Seoul to New York City, and I recall that long flight vividly. And when I grew thirsty, I asked my dad, what should I do? And he said, say to the flight attendant, juice, please. So that's my first English phrase that I ever learned, juice, please. And every time I said, juice, please, the kind flight attendant, the first white American woman I had ever met, would hand me a can of orange juice. Now, this was so marvelous to me that I kept saying, juice, please. And she would give me a can of juice every time. So I procured juice for my entire family and my aisle. Now, we landed in JFK, and my uncle's John, my mother's older brother, came to pick us up, and he drove us to his modest rental in Queens, where we would sleep in the living room for the several weeks. Now, in South Korea, bananas were extraordinarily expensive back then, and I didn't eat them in Korea. And knowing this, Uncle John bought us bunches and bunches of bananas, and he put them in this enormous wide metal basin, and he told my sisters and me to eat as many as we like. And when we finished all the bananas in the basin, he would buy us more. Unlimited orange juice and bananas, delicious bananas. I thought America was wondrous and abundant and generous. Now, back in Seoul, my father worked as a marketing executive at a cosmetics company, and my mother was a piano teacher. And when they arrived in New York City, they didn't have much money, so they actually operated a newspaper stand for a year. And my father sold the daily news and lottery tickets and candy in a coat and tie. And later on, he ran a small wholesale jewelry business, which sold inexpensive costume jewelry to street peddlers. We were middle class in Korea, but we were working class in America for many, many years. So why? Why did he come to America? Why did we move here? To answer that question, I need to tell you a little bit about my parents. In 1950, the Korean War broke out, and my father was 16 years old. And he was born and raised in Wonsan, which is now part of North Korea. And fearful that her son would be conscripted by the Communist Army at the age of 16, my pushy grandmother procured passage in an American refugee warship for her sons, for my father and his older brother. And they went to Busan, and they thought they would be separated for just a few days. And they took them to Busan. And after the border closed, my grandmother never saw her sons again. My mother is a native of Busan, and her father is a Presbyterian minister, and he served as a headmaster for an orphanage. And this orphanage served the Korean boys who had been repatriated from the colonial era Japan, for the children who had lost their parents in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. My father and mother were born as colonial subjects of Japan, and they saw their nation divided in two by foreign powers, and had their families separated and witnessed a devastating war erupt and destroy an entire nation. The Korean Armistice Agreement, signed in July of 1953, as you know, ceased hostilities between the two nations, but to this date, peace settlement has not yet been achieved. So why did my parents decide to immigrate to America? Immigrating was not my mother's idea, but she had asked her brother to sponsor us because my father had insisted. He wanted us to live in America because for him, war was not an abstraction. War was something that had made him lose his mother, his sisters, and his home forever. War was something that could take 5,000 years of civilization and slice it in two. And war was something that could take countrymen and make them into enemies. Wars could separate families forever. They could make children into orphans in a flash of light and smoke. And my father could not risk another war if he could help it. My father wanted peace. Now, peace is the opposite of war. We know that. And in the history of the world, we can point to random eras around the world, such as the Pax Romana, the Han Dynasty, the Edo period, the Tulip era, when nations did not fight. And in such times, whether it is for several hundred years or for a mere dozen, when men do not fight, citizens build paved roads. They write plays. They design beautiful buildings, and they perfect the art of paper making. They create printing presses. They invent cures for illnesses to take us out of our suffering. And we gaze at the beauty of flowers. And when there is no war, we fall in love. We bear children, and we dance at weddings. And we can hold on to our loved ones without fear of loss. We turn our swords into plowshares. And today, according to the UN High Commissioner of Refugees, there are 68.5 million displaced people around the globe, and they are seeking for peace. And you and I know that every advanced economy, including our beautiful advanced economy, is terrified of homeless people. We fear that they will bring strife and pestilence and crime into our borders. At the very least, they will bring their troubles and their sadness and their long lists of needs. How will we meet all their needs? And why should we care about them at all? Who are they to us anyway? Perhaps it is the job of the writer to ask, could they be us? Could they be us? We ask these questions. How could we not? Refugees are not an abstraction. I am the daughter of a refugee. And I am here tonight because America has graciously allowed me to have sufficient peace to read and write books. As a fiction writer, I want you to know that I have an agenda. I am trying to make you Korean. Through characters and plot and point of view and tone and setting, for recognition and reversal and catharsis. I am hoping that you will become Korean, because you see, I know that that is what literature can do. Through literature, I have been made Irish and Russian and French and Jamaican and Haitian and British and Japanese and Palestinian and Turkish and Jewish and Catholic and Muslim and African American and indigenous. And through literature, I have been male and gay and differently abled and ruling class and disenfranchised and transgender and orphaned and imprisoned. And through literature, we cross borders and we become united with the selves that we did not know we could be. And we are reunited with the selves that we have lost. And I believe that this is how we approach peace, with our arms held wide open and our hands bearing juice and bananas, to welcome the children into our lives. And tonight, I want to thank you for your fellowship. And I wish you and your families lasting, enduring peace. Thank you.